Hi, I'm Beth Ferris. I am the sports therapist for Blackburn Hawks Ice Hockey Club. I'm 24 years old.
This episode I'm joined with Beth, Blackburn Hawks sports therapist. So Beth, you've been with the club for 3 seasons now. This is your 3rd season.
Correct.
How is it that you got into being a sports therapist?
So I first started at university. I started at college. I studied PE, biology and graphic design at college as my A-levels, and then went to Edge Hill University to do sports therapy as a Bachelor's of Science degree. And then when I graduated from there, I think one of my lecturers got in touch with the club with the possibility of using them for her academic research. And then in return, they were like, oh, you could give us a sports therapist as if we're going to do this partnership. And then that's where I came in. So yeah, that's how I ended up here.
So what was it like when you first joined? Because you seem like a really confident person, but I'd imagine it might be something that's built up in the 3 years that you've come here. Or was you this confident when you started?
I might have seen this confidence when I started, but it's definitely built up over time. When I first began, it was woo. It was woo. That's all I can describe it as was woo. Because there was no sports therapist before me. There was a first aider, Lynn Charnock. She carried me that first year. Love you, Lynn. So they didn't have any action plans, or they didn't have any processes that I could follow already in place. So I kind of had to build all that up from the bottom. But that's been quite fun in itself to do. It's taught me a lot. So, but yeah, I think my confidence has mainly come from experience, just figuring out what needs to be done and doing it, and then doing it over and over again. And then I've just become more comfortable, and with that comes confidence, I think.
Was it nerve-wracking when you first started at the club?
Yeah, really nerve-wracking. Because I'd watched maybe a few games of ice hockey before, but I was going into this completely blind, did not know any of the rules or anything, didn't know what was going on those times. But Dom was really, really kind to me when I first started, and so were all the lads actually. So that really helped me be more comfortable with what's going on. But yeah, it was really scary.
You said you didn't have a clue about ice hockey before you started here. Was you into sports beforehand? And what was it that made you want to become a sports therapist?
Yeah, so I'm a season ticket holder of Manchester City.
Oh, no! Wrong side!
So I'm not an avid football supporter, but my mum is, and I'm the only one of her 3 children that will actually attend games with her. So I keep getting slated for supporting Man City, but
I'm not surprised.
Especially
all the way.
If I support any club, it would definitely still be Man City. No. But I grew up watching football with my mum. I think in high school, I really enjoyed sciences. I really enjoyed biology, the human body and how it worked. And then as I did PE, and I was already quite athletic at high school as well. I did trampolining growing up, I did gymnastics, and I coached a lot in all the high school teams and that. And then with that pushed me to do PE and biology at college. And then I both really enjoyed those subjects. And it kind of, from that, enjoyment of sport, enjoyment playing sport, and then enjoyment of learning about the processes of the human body and how it works, that kind of just naturally gravitated towards sports therapy for me. Because I think I always wanted to work in sport.
Did you know it was sports therapy from the start, or was it just I want to go into sports, but then we'll figure it out as we get through it? It
was kind of like that. I think it was, when I was looking at university courses, it was between sports therapy and sports science. And then I think just sports therapy just called to me. It was my calling. So yeah, it just, to be honest, when I look back at it, I do kind of wish I chose sports science. But I think sports therapy has opened up a lot of opportunities for me, the same way that sports science would have. So it's just, I don't know, you life sometimes chooses a path for you, and I guess this is the path that life has chosen for me.
I've seen that you're drawn, so I like, the thing that I've seen is that it goes towards a place first, like, you know, like if you're drawn to a city, something's waiting for you there. It's sort of like when you go to choose a decision, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like you choosing between sports therapy and sports science, something drawing you to sports therapy. Yeah. So it was like, if you thought of it a bit deeply, let's say, it was like as if the universe was pointing you towards Blackburn.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you went completely opposite to that, you might not be at this club.
Exactly.
So it works out. It works out. A way. I think I remember when I finished high school, I didn't really like the thought of college. I was like, I don't really want to go, but I knew I had to, kind of thing, because you had to be in education to a certain age. So I just took sports. Didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. Before I finished high school, I wanted to be an accountant.
Oh, and now we're here.
And then I was just like, I'll do sports because I love sports. And then it was only in my final year of college when I started going to the gym. But then I was like, maybe personal trainer. But then I was like, I don't really fully understand it fully. And then I thought, media and journalism. I got the opportunity for a sports club, and it just sort of called my name the second I seen it, just like you said with sports therapy.
Yeah.
I feel like there's different ways of like people going into sports. You never know what you want to do.
Yeah.
But the second you take one step, you're drawn to something from that step.
It like snowballs, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then it's
next
you just
thing
end up
somewhere where you actually enjoy doing stuff.
Exactly.
There's one thing that I've always wondered though, and I never knew how to put into a question, and I only just thought of it how to word it today.
Yeah.
When you see people collide on the ice or go in as if like you can sort of see, they're about to collide, can you like preempt that you're going to be needed? If you see like a collision, you could go, okay, I might be needed there, and like, or do you just sort of act when they go down and see that you need it?
I think there's some like injuries that you're always on the watch for, like concussion, like head checks, or I think anything where they slide straight into the boards, you're always like, okay, because sometimes it can be collarbone, neck injury, head injury, or like back injuries. I think a lot of the time, when I'm watching, I'm always like, oh my days, they're dead. And then I'm like, actually, and then they get up and they finish skating, and I'm like, oh, maybe they're not dead. So I think there's a lot of, if it's head and neck, you're always really cautious when you're watching collisions like that, because there's a lot of underlying injuries that can come up. But I forgot the question.
Can you preempt like the fact that you might be needed on the ice from actions that you can see? Oh
yeah. So head and neck, I'm always like, yeah, right, might be needed here. A lot of the time, I think they're going to be like quite seriously injured. They're actually all right. Like they are a lot tougher than what I think they are. But I'd rather think the worst, so then I'm prepared for if it is the worst. But there's nothing really specifically apart from like head and neck injuries or like some really crazy back injury or like if the blade's in the air, that's always a very like, you weak it on the ready. But that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Do you remember the first time you leapt onto the ice? Because I've seen you a few times come literally galloping like a gazelle.
People say that it's elegant, and when I'm on the ice, I'm like, boom, 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 boom. That's what I feel like. I feel like I'm like, boom, boom, boom.
Oh, it does look a lot elegant though. Just like you just like galloping to the rescue. Just like, I forgot where I'm going with that.
The first time I leapt onto the ice.
Yeah, do you remember the first time when you ever done it? Because it's not just Blackburn seeing you come on the ice for sometimes if the opposition doesn't have a physio with them or sports therapist, you go on as well.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first time you ever did have to go on?
I don't remember the very first time that I had to go on, because a lot of the time, I think the first time I went on, I actually wasn't needed. I think that is the case most of the time. So that's fine by me. If I'm not seriously needed, then that's great. But I remember it was David's. Oh my gosh. It was my very first blood injury and head injury. And it went cheek first into the boards, and it like split his cheek here. Like it was literally just force that it split his cheek open. Ooh. And it was head first, head down on the ice, got over to him, and it was just head down on the ice, and there was just blood. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, no, I wasn't really, but I just remember like thinking, right, what's the process here? What do we need to do? But you learn all these things in like all your courses and stuff, but like Davids is quite a tough guy, so he was like, no, and then I was like, Davids, you need to stay still, like you could have a neck injury. I was like, no, and I was like, oh my gosh. Like other sports therapists will know this, like whenever you're trying to clear C-spine and they're just like, no, I'm fine, and I'm like, you could have a neck injury. Anyways, yeah, it was Davids face down on the ice, and oh my gosh, it was, looking back on it now, like at the time you just kind of go into overdrive and you just kind of do A, B, C, D, E, or whatever you need to do. But I remember looking down, seeing the blood, and then I'm waving for someone else to come on the ice, because that was just what we're taught to do for like first aid, for pitch side management. But then like there was no one else to come for me. Like I think Lynn was in the stands, and I don't think she was allowed on the ice. I don't know who I was waving at. I just remember panicking and waving, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then I looked up, and I think it was Jacob Lutwich there, and he was like, what do you need? And I just I have this stark image of in my head of just Jacob like there going, what do you need? And I was like, I need a towel, please. Someone give me a towel. So anyways, and then we managed it, but luckily Lynn was there, and she took hold of that situation, because that was my very first just injury in general, and I was like, I have no idea. But I didn't know what I was doing, but you know, I think I just needed some guidance. Yeah.
Like sort of like your first like proper injury, you just like reassurance that you're doing the right thing kind of thing.
Exactly. So yeah, it was David's. He was fine. We just stereo stripped it and made sure it was clean. And then he just carried on playing.
I think that's the thing with like hockey players and like the type of sports like that. They're very much like hard shelled in a way. It's
exactly.
Like it's sort of like when you grow up in sports, you sort of taught like just run it off. Can you stand on it? Yeah. Okay, run it off. You'll be fine.
Exactly.
I feel like that's what hockey players tend to do as well sometimes.
Oh yeah. Some of them are really tough.
Yeah. Like
some of them not so, but not side-eyeing anyone.
Like there's some that I've seen like really harsh straight into the boards, and I'm like, how does that not, like they go into it and then they fall into the ice, and you just, how does that not hurt?
Exactly.
But then they get up and they just like belt straight to the other end of the ice, and you're like, what? There's like some level of respect you've got to have for all of them.
Oh yeah. A lot of the time they are injured, but like
adrenaline takes
over, and then I'm like, well, you could sit this out. My advice would be to sit this out, but at the end of the day, it's their own choice. And usually it's not a major injury, and they just play through it, and then it's just like, oh, sounds just you do you.
How is it that you go about like? I remember you telling me it's prognosing, not diagnosing.
Yes.
How is it that you go about that? How do you get so confident in, I know it's not like certain, like that's definitely what's wrong, but like confident in that could be a possibility that that's what's wrong. How do you go about that and being so confident in that decision?
So that's kind of what you learn through the whole of the degree for sports therapy is going through different processes, finding out what the symptoms are, finding out what hurts, finding out what doesn't hurt, and then you kind of just build up like a portfolio of like what hurts, what doesn't hurt, what movements can they do, what movements can't they do, how far can this arm go this way or this way, and then by the process of elimination you kind of like, okay, so this injury, it would present like this and this and this, and they present like this. So it could be that, but it could also be this because this injury would also present like this. And then that's kind of what it is. But a lot of the misconceptions is that like, we know what the injury is, but we're not x-ray machines, we're not like MRI machines. We're just suggesting that it could be this because of this. And that's what the prognosis is. We can't diagnose anyone. I think a lot of the time it's like, oh, well, it could be broken. And I'm like, well, yeah, it could be broken, but it could also just be a muscular strain. Like, so it's a tough one, that one. But I think with experience and over time, you kind of just get better at realizing what injuries look like, and then kind of matching what an injury would present as to what the player has got.
So is it sort of like when you prognose, if you think it's something sort of like serious, do you always advise them to go to see someone more qualified than you are, like a doctor and stuff?
Oh yeah, my favourite thing is to refer people on. I'm like, oh, that is out of my scope of practice. I cannot dislocate and relocate your shoulder for you. Yeah, I think some people will be like, oh, well, you're just pieing them off to someone. And it's like, well, maybe I am, but I'm not going to do something that I'm unqualified and not confident in doing. I'd rather be safe and send them to someone who does know what they're doing. But yeah, if it's like anything more serious than like, I don't know. If it's anything serious, I would always just be like, that's a hospital job, that. Like, I cannot do that. I'm sorry, but there's not me.
If it's still that bad in the morning, go doctor.
Yes. I'm always like, well, I can't really diagnose a concussion for you, but you're going to need to the hospital to do that. So, and they're like, and I'm like, I'm not qualified. I'm not qualified.
So with you going into a male-dominated sport, I know there's quite a few areas for females to go into sports, and no matter what the sector is that you go into, it's always nerve-wracking and a bit anxious as well for someone to go into a sport that is predominantly male. What was it that helped you sort of settle into it? Was it the lads on the team that helped you settle, or was it getting used to surrounded? Like, what was it that helped you?
I would definitely say it's the lads on the team, the lads here at Blackburn. So they're such a friendly bunch of guys, and they're all kind of like, it's like a little brotherhood. Growing up, I always got on well with both male and female friends, and I kind of got the male banter. So I think that's definitely helped here, because it's just a typical sports team where it's like, oh, like all the different funny bits and that. But it is just a nice environment here, I think. I'm not sure what it's like in other places. I know when I did my placement in football, it definitely wasn't like this. And I always tell that to people, like, people are like, oh, well, you could probably make so much money in football. And I was like, well, yeah, I could, but it's just so much nicer at Blackburn. Like, it's just...
You'd rather be somewhere where you're comfortable rather than somewhere for the money kind of thing.
Exactly.
Especially, I think, in sports.
Yeah.
I think that's one of like the main things, to feel comfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
Somewhere.
Exactly.
I feel like sometimes it's just when you like turn up for the first time, it's like sometimes it's just like that nice friendly smile from someone. They don't know who you are, but you knew, and they just like smile, and you're just like, okay, that's a bit more relaxed. And then as you slowly come in, you get more smiles, and then that first person that smiles at you slowly turns into, "Aye, all right," and then you just slowly build up that connection with people.
Exactly.
And I think that's something that definitely helped me get into. I feel a bit more eased and relaxed into teams like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's quite important for people going, like, especially females going into sports.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I don't think, as much as females coming into sports is getting bigger, and like women's football is getting bigger as well.
Yeah.
There's still like a lot of work to be done with that.
Yeah.
And people may not like that. I don't know. But it's something that is coming. I don't know how to move on.
I know what you're trying to say, though.
Yeah, but I feel like I'm going off on a tangent as well.
You do you, girl. You.
But I guess what I'm trying to get at in a way, is what would your advice be for a female coming into maybe a sports therapist position that may be trying to get into a male dominated sport because of their love growing up of it?
I would definitely say know your stuff. I think the main thing is knowing your stuff. So then if you do get questioned, not necessarily because of your gender, but sometimes it could be that
because you knew.
Yeah, because you knew. Just being confident in what you know, I think that definitely would help you be more rooted. I
think it's also like,
oh God,
sometimes they're just curious on who you are and what your role is.
Yeah.
So if you're confident in knowing what you're doing,
yes,
sometimes
exactly.
that helps ease into it, kind of thing.
Exactly.
Because I think for some people, just having someone turn up and you're just like, never seen you before.
Yeah, like, who is that?
Like, what do you do? Who are you?
Yeah.
I know, like, sometimes I'll get that. Like, when I've only been in sports this year doing media and journalism, and I can tell with some people's faces where they're looking at you like, who are you? Like, when you first turn up. But then once they see you in action of what you do, they're like, okay, and then they feel a bit more comfortable in like coming up to you then.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I guess maybe that's what you're trying to say, like, know your stuff kind of thing for that reason.
Yeah, just knowing your stuff and then being confident. Being yourself definitely is a good way to go. I think once you start acting like someone that you're not, then you start to feel anxious on what you're doing and how you're presenting. But I think if you're true to yourself, then I think the rest of it comes.
And that's the thing that I noticed when the first day that I met you on media day this season, I think I was only here for an hour that you were here, but you were just yourself, and I think that's the thing that made me feel a lot more comfortable as well. Everyone was just being themselves. The hockey lads were playing around like with football, like with some props and stuff like that, and they were joking around. All the media crew were just like joking around, like they get on like it's like a family. And then like I met you a few hours into media day and you were just straight yourself, and I was just like, that just made me feel a lot more comfortable coming in here knowing, okay, these are all getting on really well, they're themselves, I can be myself and I can do what I do kind of thing.
Exactly.
So I think you are right in saying just being yourself as well.
Yeah.
But sometimes I think it's hard to be yourself when you've got a bit of imposter syndrome in certain situations.
Definitely.
Because I know that was the case for me when I first started.
Oh yeah.
I was like, it was a sport that I grew up in, and I'm stood there and I'm like, okay, I've been in like this parts before, but not doing like a job kind of thing.
Yeah.
So then I'm stood there and I'm like,
this don't feel right.
I'm like, should I be here? Like, I'm like recording things and I'm like, yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. It's just like scary, but I think going back to knowing what you're doing, I think, and then just like throwing yourself into your job.
I think we can call that there. Yeah. Thank you, Beth, for joining me.
You're very welcome. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.